5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go ahead.
Good evening and welcome to the school committee meeting of Tuesday, October 13th at 6:30. We are live with you on Zoom tonight. Welcome everyone. We'll start off with the acceptance of the minutes for the meeting of September 28th, 2020.
Motion to accept?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That is the 5 of us. Moving on to nothing under communications or audience, we'll go to Dr. Cron with the superintendent's report.
I will be very brief this evening. I have a lot to cover later under new business. So I just want to point out one thing. The attendance, I know Mr. Mills, you asked last week or last meeting about how attendance was going. So we've been tracking attendance. Well, we've always been tracking attendance,
Yeah.
but I brought some data tonight for you. The remote cohort and the in-school cohort are running about 97% attendance. This is, for example, at the elementaries, it's 97% for in-school and between 95 and 96% for the remote cohorts. And the middle school, this was just for the week of October 5th through 9th, but the middle school was at 96% for the in-school cohort and 95% for the out-of-school cohort. And Rockland High School was at 92% for the in-school and 94% for the remote. So overall, school attendance has been very strong, given that we're just getting things started, so to speak.
Okay, thank you. That's good news.
I just wanted to share that.
Thank you.
Yep. And that's all I have for superintendent's report.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Cron, and thanks for that update. That is exciting that we're all here, right?
Yeah.
Moving on to reports, we have monthly reports for September. Administrators report, Dr. Harrison, Ms. Bond, Mrs. Smith, Mrs. Shifley, Mrs. Sheehan. We have guidance from Mrs. Black and pupil personnel services with Dr. Manigula.
3 motions to accept the reports?
I just have a question.
Sure, Emily.
I see that the fire drills were none, and I know that there was some conversation regarding fire drills. Is there an update on that, or how did that go?
Fire drills have taken place. I noticed that they were written as none too. I think this report didn't cover on Friday was the high school, where the high school fire drill. No, there have been fire drills.
Is it because they were in October and this is September? Were they in October?
Yeah, that's
Maybe
why.
that's why.
Donna Lamb's muted, but she's saying yes.
Yes. Oh, sorry, I didn't check my Brady Bunch screen to see all the heads. Okay, so that is true, that
Yeah.
they were in October, not in September, and these are September. So great question. So we have a first. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that's us.
All of them.
Moving on to school newsletters for October, Eston, Jefferson Memorial Park, the middle school, and the high school. Any comments or questions?
No. They're good
No?
stuff. Good stuff.
Okay.
Good reading.
It's good to see them back, I think, and as
Yes.
usual, right? Some
That's
business back in the schools. Nothing under old business. Moving on to new business. We have a request for out-of-country field trips, and we have Miss Kristen Walsh here with us tonight.
Hi, everybody. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Welcome.
thank
Thanks
you.
for coming.
Thank you for having me. And I also have a guest here. I think Mr. Benica is going to unmute Claire Giblin from EF. She is a customer experience manager who I've worked with several times, and I'm excited to have her here to answer anything that you might wonder about the current state of travel and how EF is handling the world situation. But first, I'm going to share my screen to present a very brief slideshow. Which I had originally planned. Hopefully everyone can see that. Please let me know if you can't.
Yes.
Thank you. This was originally what I was going to present in March before COVID happened and forced us out of school. Usually I plan for trips 2.5 to 3 years out at this point after almost a decade of figuring out what worked for Rockland and our school. These are tours for 2022 and 2023, but we're already a little bit shorter than we normally would be for planning. A little bit of history for the new members. Rockland High's Travel Club started in 2011. That's when we started planning our first tour. It was for juniors and seniors in 2013. We went to Spain and Morocco, and since then we've gone to all these other places all over the world And I added it up the other day. 244 students from Rockland High have got a chance to go international on one of these tours,
Good.
all with EF tours. We do have trips planned in April and now June for Greece and Australia, New Zealand. Obviously, those are up in the air, and we'll keep you updated on that. And I will continue to work with Mr. Harrison and Dr. Cohn, and EF as well as we monitor the state of things going into the winter. EF has been great at communication with me, great at giving me options, and it was as smooth as could be hoped for when we did postpone the Australia-New Zealand trip in the spring to next year. All the families were really happy and satisfied with the state of everything, whether they are able to go to the new postponed trip or if they got a voucher or a refund. So I was very happy with how EF handled it, which gives me great confidence going forward on new trips and the ones we already have, that no matter what is going on with COVID or other issues, they'll handle it in a way we're happy with.
Yeah.
The next 3 trips, I put up the maps because I was admittedly very unfamiliar with Latin and South America until the last few years. I've been on tours with EF to Galapagos and Ecuador with other adults, and then I did a training tour with them to Panama this past January, is my last trip before COVID. And I became fascinated with both of these places, and it just really intrigued me to want to take students there. That's all I kept thinking as I did each activity and had all these experiences, was that students would love this. It would be a great way to connect their foreign language experience at Rockland High, much the same way Spain was on our first tour, give them a sense of a different part of the world. So I'm very excited about those opportunities. And then we're doing Italy again, which we have done in 2016. But this is a different version. It's Southern Italy, and it's focused on food and culture, which I know the students would love. Just showing you a brief overview of each tour. Belize I chose for a few reasons. One was that everyone who has been there through EF and that I've met through other teachers have said it was one of their favorite places. The way it was described to me was a combination of Australia, Mexico, and Costa Rica. Costa Rica because of the adventurous sense of the tour, Mexico because of the ruins like the ones you see there, a lot of history and ancient civilizations, as well as like Australia because it has the second biggest barrier reef outside of Australia, which is shown in the other picture.
Yeah.
After going to Australia with the students and seeing how much they love the outdoor activities and the more adventurous things, not that they don't love the museums and those kind of visits, but I thought this would be a great one. It's also shorter and a little bit more affordable than some of the other tours. And trying a February date was something new for me, but I think it might work better for some people than summer and just give a different option than the April vacation tour. Peru is 11 days in the summer of 2022. It would be end of June, early July, but I put June. And obviously Machu Picchu is a bucket list item for a lot of people, including myself, and would be an incredible experience for them to see the Amazon jungle. We stay in a lodge, they get to see wildlife and learn about the history of this place in addition to what they've already learned in school. And it's just a beautiful, welcoming place that I know everyone I've talked to who's been there would love to go back and thought their students just got so much out of the experience. And then Italy, I know a lot about Italy, but I haven't been to many of these places. It's 10 days over April vacation in 2023. Like I said, it was based on cuisine and culture is the itinerary EF put together. We do go to Rome and they get to see all of those main tourist sightseeing things that are impressive and they look forward to, but we take cooking classes and we get a tour of a buffalo mozzarella farm and an olive oil business and some family-owned businesses, and they get to go to a gladiator museum and a chocolate tour. So I've always found in my travels that the cities are great and amazing things to see and sometimes are the highlights, but I would say most people really enjoy the smaller, out-of-the-way villages and countryside towns and things we do in those places because it really represents the real life of Italians in this case or other places that we visit. EF, some of you are familiar with the company, some aren't as much, but we get a 24-hour-a-day, 7 days a week tour director that is the best resource for us while we're on tour, in addition to all of the global resources EF has in place. I would bring teacher chaperones based on a ratio of about 1:8. It's 1:6 in ES, but we tend to, with the high school students, have a little flexibility with that. They have a 24-hour emergency on-call service and a peace of mind policy that I will go over on another slide. And then my approach to safety has always been, since our first tour, that the students are prepared for all of the protocols, the rules, the expected behavior before we go. And then once we get there, Rockland students always step up and behave really well. They know what's expected of them. We have a routine very early, and the chaperones are there to take care of the students and be looking out for safety as our #1 priority, so that the tour director and the local tour guides can focus on the logistics of getting us around and showing us things.
Yep.
I think that in the past 10 years, I've seen so many students who have traveled with us become global citizens. We started the Global Ambassador Program. We've completed one project with that, and I'm hoping as things settle down a little bit, we'll have some more students sign up for projects that they're interested in. It brings things they learn about in school and see in movies and television shows to life. It makes them more curious. It has them set goals for themselves. It really inspires them based on what they might want to study abroad in a different country, or where else they'd want to add to their list. And it just makes them kind of overall more independent and responsible, I've seen. And I think I've heard that from a lot of parents as well. I've mentioned EF already, but they have over 50 years of experience. They are based in Cambridge, which has been wonderful for me because I have a lot of access to their offices when they're open, and the staff is always available to me. They have a global and local presence with schools and offices and different parts of their company all over the globe. They're accredited just like our school is. Students can earn high school and college credit, but we tend to encourage them to do the Global Ambassador Program. But if they are an older student, they can get credits through Southern New Hampshire. And they do offer what I have done thorough research into, the best value for price. I have looked at other companies in the past. I've admitted that to EF, and I've never found a company that offers as much as them for the price they do. You can see it's tough to see on the PowerPoint, but this is a map of where all of their offices are. I've been to quite a few. We've taken students to a few, depending on where we are. And they've had just an amazing ability to be there for whatever we need whenever we're on tour. And this is the normal global protection insurance that I always include on our tours. Students are required to take it. It handles tour cancellation and interruption, illness and accident, baggage, property, all of the things that you'd want for a normal, quote unquote, normal trip or vacation to include. But obviously, with COVID, there's some more steps to it that will come up as well. Our Peace of Mind program that EF has always enrolled us in, this is for every traveler. If we need to make travel plans change, we can do that up to 45 days before our tour, which that's what happened with Australia and New Zealand last year. It was Mr. Harrison and Dr. Cron and myself that made the decision, but EF then later worked with groups who hadn't made the decision as early as us to do the same. So whether it's a world safety protocol, whether it's the school's decision, we have a lot of flexibility, and they were amazing at getting our group switched to a new year or refunds and vouchers. So this is my last slide, and then I think Claire has some things to share as well, and we can answer any questions, but I know that this is a tough time, and I know that people are hesitant to say this is something we should be doing, but I've thought about it a lot since March. I've continued to plan in my head and work with EF through the summer and as school started, and I just keep coming back to the idea that we have to have something to look forward to. We have to think that 2022 and 2023 will be better, and that we'll have some of this figured out. I think that there's two ways to look at 2 years away. A lot can change with COVID and world travel restrictions and the way we approach travel, but it's also the very bare minimum I'd want to give parents to pay for these tours. We've been closer to 3 years for the last couple, and that has a lot of effects on the tour. It helps students stay committed to school because we have a policy that they sign a contract saying they'll keep up their grades to a high standard, that their attendance will be good, and that their behavior will be impeccable. It's also allowing them to do fundraisers to help make it more affordable for parents. And Halloween is the deadline for their early enrollment deadline. I've never not planned early enough to get the early enrollment deadline, which is why I really wanted to come to this meeting tonight. $300 it's an important number. And if they're paying monthly, it makes it much more reasonable. But the biggest thing, and I really hope this can give you some peace of mind, is the risk-free enrollment period, which they created because of COVID and because of the planning process changing a little bit. If anybody signs up from now until, Claire could probably tell me the exact date, but it's a date in December. As long as they're enrolled by then, they can drop out and get a full 100% refund by May. So I know a lot can change between now and May. A lot can change over the next couple of weeks even. But if they can sign up and get that early enrollment discount, lock in that price, start paying monthly if they choose to. Some people pay twice a month. Then at least they can get a head start on those payments and look forward to the trip when everything settles back in. And if it doesn't and people are concerned, or if a family situation changes, they can get 100% of their money back by May. And we would obviously have a meeting either by Zoom or in person with families. I would keep up with families and give them all the updates on what EF is seeing, what the travel restrictions are from the US perspective, other countries' perspectives. EF is great with customer service. A parent can get a hold of anyone, anytime. But I understand the idea of waiting and trying to plan these later from a school perspective, but from a family perspective, and the questions I've gotten from parents already about where is my freshman son going to be able to go, and I think I want to send him when he's a junior or senior, or she wants to go where her sister did, and where are you going? And because of this program being so successful, I think over the last few years, people come to Rockland High School wanting to know where their trip is going to be. We introduced different tours at 8th grade orientation last year, and we had a display and students representing where they had been. And parents emailed me last year, please put me on your contact list for when you pick your new tours. And I teach freshmen and sophomores, and they're asking me in class, when are we going to find out where our tour is? When can we sign up? So I think we all, including me who hasn't been anywhere since January, need something to look forward to. And I would really love to be able to have an informational meeting and give parents the opportunity to make that decision if they want to sign their students up. But I know that Claire can answer any questions as well. I will stop sharing my screen, but I can answer anything, or if Claire wants to add anything that I missed, that would be great.
I think this is Tom Mills, and I think we've been doing business with EF for a long time, and they've always done a super job for us. And I appreciate some of the things we've gone through, and I've been around for a couple of weeks, and and they've always come up and always helped us out and got it done. And I appreciate that. I think they're a great outfit.
Thanks, Tom. Anyone else have questions before I ask a couple? Mr. Biggins, I know you've been on this before and you've gone around the rodeo, so that's why I put you on the spot to go first.
Yeah.
Do you have anything, or do you want to wait and I'll come back?
Okay. I don't mind being on the spot. No, I think to echo Tom's thoughts, I think EF has always done a great job by Rockland schools and the whole host of other schools that they serve around the world. We've had some particularly challenging situations in the past that Tom referred to that they handled very, very, very well. I know Ms. Walsh, as she said, has run this club since 2011 very effectively, and there's been a lot of kids that have really benefited from the travel and had a lot of great time and learned a lot. Quite frankly, I mean, and this is just sort of on a personal note, maybe it's just 2020 getting to me, but we just sort of got through how to open schools back up, how to get kids back in, how to get teachers back in. And it's hard to wrap my brain around kids getting on planes and traveling across the country. And I know that this is going to be 2 or 3 years down the road. And, the assumption is that maybe at some point this will all go away and, life will pick back up to very much normal again and we can start living our lives. I'm just not so sure life is really ever going to come back to what we consider normal. So I guess I have a few questions. One sort of on this particular trip. My question is that Ms. Walsh, on a particular year's trip, and I should probably know this off the top of my head, but I don't. How long in advance do we typically ask school committee for, acceptance of such a thing?
More than 2 years.
So we're about on pace for that normally, for this?
We're about 6 months behind because the February trip in 2022, I would have gone February.
Okay, makes sense. My other question is, and this is sort of separate from procedurally, the list of countries that you've sort of been to is awesome. Has there been any, what are your favorite couple countries that you've sort of been to so far?
That's really tough. I love Australia.
Yep.
I'm hoping we get to go this summer, fingers crossed. The students had an amazing time in 2016 and I had been there previously and loved it a little bit more every time. Japan was incredibly interesting and we had a small group of 12, so that was a different sort of experience where we really all got to be a close-knit group and discover everything together.
Awesome.
But yeah, I think everywhere has its pros and cons, and I've never had a student come back and say anything other than, we think our trip was the best, comparing it to their friends or siblings. So that's a good sign as well.
There's so many places in the world to visit, right? I mean, countless hundreds and thousands of places that kids could go and visit and get, learn a lot from. I wonder, like with, kids having a 4-year cycle of going through schools, and they probably only go through one trip in their 4 years, maybe 2. I wonder if there are a couple or 3 places in the world that, our kids sort of might experience the most culture from, or trips that you've sort of, been on that have been so good that you consider going back repeat, for kids that maybe didn't have the chance, because maybe we went to Australia 3 years ago, or we went to Rome a number of years ago. Would we consider revisiting some of those top places?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think Australia is a repeat because I had so many requests. It was supposed to be 4 years after 2016, and I had a lot of siblings going on that one whose older siblings had done it. I think if Australia continues to be popular, I would do that every 4 years, so they got it once in their cycle. Europe is tricky. I would only take students there in April and maybe February, but definitely not summer, just because of crowds and heat, and it's just a different experience, I think. April is kind of the perfect time to go. I know students would love to go to France. I know students would love to go back to Spain. I'm happy to go to any of those places. Italy was the #1 country I heard as a repeat that the students wanted, so that's why I picked that for 2023. And I thought this tour was a great combination of the things they picture in their mind with Rome, as well as some things that they might not have prior knowledge about, but I think will be amazing kind of new experiences for them. I found that on every tour, no matter where we go, the moments when the students can interact with locals, when they can do hands-on activities, when they can do things in addition to the museums and the walking tours, which are all fantastic. I'm not saying anything bad about those, and they're important, but the hands-on things are the best. And this was one of those itineraries that I thought had the most of those. And I think Peru and Belize, in a very different way, have a lot of those hands-on experiences as well.
Great. I had one more question. Don't remember what it was. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good.
I think Claire, if anyone has any questions for Claire, she got booted a little bit from Zoom, but she's back. So if anyone wants to talk.
I'm so sorry. We have a terrible storm here. So I keep getting a notification that my internet is unstable, but I'm sure you all know the pains of the internet connection.
We do. Thank you for coming here. And don't worry, we have had each other having to call each other because one of us has lost power or our connection went away. So don't worry, no pressure on your behalf. And I appreciate that you're being here. I'm going to keep going around the horn here. Anyone else, Jamie or Emily, want to go? We both have questions.
Go ahead, Emily, go ahead.
On page 5, I don't know if you have this packet that was provided to us, but it says, under this program, groups have the ability to reschedule their existing tour to any date through September 30th, 2023, or September 22, depending on their original tour date at no additional cost. But it's only available to groups up till 45 days. So what happens after the 45 days?
Yep, so that is a policy for I believe that was for the groups that have tours scheduled for 2021.
Okay.
So we have some groups who, either because they're not comfortable traveling right now, or their school is putting pressure on them to kind of postpone the trip. We've given them that flexibility to either postpone their tour to a later date, either to 22 or 23, at no additional cost to them. So they can do that up until 45 days prior to the departure date. At 45 days, that's when that's the last day that we would make a call on whether or not we would run a tour. So obviously safety is our #1 priority, and we're looking at the U.S. Department of State travel advisory levels. We're monitoring guidance from the CDC, the WHO, local and federal authorities. So I think, at a month and a half out, if we sort of determine that we are not able to provide the experience that that the group signed up for, or that it's unsafe, then we would recommend that they postpone the trip.
Okay.
Which is what I was kind of hinting at earlier. They would have done for Australia, New Zealand at a point pretty close to when we had already postponed. So we made the decision as a school, but they would have talked to me and made that decision with me pretty quickly after that anyway.
Yep.
Which is why we did postpone a year.
So within that 45 day period, as we've sort of all seen within the last 8 months, things can change pretty quickly. So if travel advisories change within that 45 days, what's the scenario?
Travelers will still have all of the options that are available to them now. So they can, push the tour to a later date. They can get a voucher of 100% of what they paid, or they can cancel for a reduced cancellation fee.
Okay.
And with the vouchers, the hope is, some schools that I kind of knew about and heard through the grapevine in the spring canceled and didn't postpone. So those students in those districts were faced with a voucher that they had to use in some other way than with their teacher who had originally planned it, whereas I postponed, so they all had the opportunity. We actually had several students from the Australia tour decide to go to Greece instead, and EF was able to move them to that one. If in the spring things don't go the way we planned with Greece and Australia, they'll have the opportunity to use a voucher on a future tour. If it's approved tonight, they'd be able to move to one of those tours as well. So I have the hope that I would keep scheduling and giving the students opportunities to use those vouchers if at the current time what they paid for isn't a possible tour. And that's something that I think the students would like as well. Most of them understood and wouldn't have been comfortable traveling even if it was a possibility last summer, so they were happy we moved it till this year. And I would never, and I know EF would never send the students and the teachers on a tour that we weren't 100% comfortable with. So we'll have to decide that in the spring, but I feel like this gives everybody the best opportunity to plan for the future if we do allow them to enroll now, because then they'd have several trips that they could think about.
What if it's a senior that will be a senior while they're traveling, but then we postpone and now they're not students of ours? How does that work? Now they're off to college and we're rescheduling and they're not even our students.
That's a great question. We had, I want to say 8 seniors that were supposed to go to Australia last year. 6 of them are not coming. They took the voucher or the refund. The 2 that are coming, we are giving them a separate contract for expectations and behavior. We're having a discussion with the parents. This has only happened sort of in one other case where when we went to Australia in 2016, we had a senior who had just graduated. He was the only senior on the tour. And we had a meeting with the chaperones, his parents, and the student to say, it doesn't matter that you're not a Rockland student. If you're coming on this trip, you're agreeing to Rockland rules and expectations. And he was totally fine with that. Parents were fine with that. And he knew that he would be sent home if he broke any of the rules, just like we have for the high school students. And I would do the same thing in a postponement situation. If the students were willing to travel as a graduate, they would have the same student expectations as someone under 21 years old that we give every student. Or they could take the voucher or the refund. It would be up to them.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Davidson.
And with the voucher, they can use that on any EF sponsored trip. It doesn't have to be a Rockland High sponsored trip. Right? Am I understanding that? Okay.
Yeah. So the vouchers are,
sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say the vouchers are really, really flexible. They can be transferred to other students. They can be used for other EF products. So some graduating seniors have redeemed their voucher on an ultimate break tour. We also have ET tours for graduating seniors. I know some parents have even taken a voucher and signed up for a go-ahead tour. So so there's a ton of flexibility with the voucher.
And we have had students who have had to get vouchers for various reasons, not even COVID related, other reasons as well, that the parents have just used it for a younger sibling on another one of our tours.
Okay.
If the older sibling hasn't toured, they've just applied it to their EF balance for another student.
So there's like no expiration date on the voucher, essentially.
That's a clear question.
They do have a 2-year expiration date as of right now, but I think, you know, we are willing to be flexible if a student or, you know, a family member really wants to travel, we want to make that happen. So definitely flexible in terms of the expiration date, but as of right now, it's 2 years.
Okay, thank you. Emily, do you have any more?
Yeah, one more. You're introducing an additional option for individuals to purchase additional insurance for a full refund for a day up, 1 day before the tour. Do you have the cost of that insurance?
Oh, yes. So we do, one of the pieces of feedback that we heard this past year, and I know a lot of districts are requiring this, is a cancel for any reason insurance. So the policy is more expensive than our standard insurance, which covers a lot. It covers, you know, cancellation, tour interruption, it's your medical coverage abroad, covers personal items if anything were to be stolen. But the cancel for any reason insurance, it's $460 as opposed to our $165 policy. And that, you know, that would be for, I like to say, you know, if somebody's definitely committed to traveling, I think that our package for $165 is, you know, covers everything that you need. But we have had some cases where, you know, Johnny gets accepted into this elite soccer camp 2 weeks before the trip is scheduled to depart, and it's not necessarily covered by insurance because they're not canceling for an emergency reason. So that is $460. So a little bit more expensive because it gives you that ability to cancel for any reason up until the day you leave. But I think our standard package is, you know, pretty robust.
I think I would make that optional still for the family to choose that if they want to, and I would explain it to them in the informational meeting. I require the 165 because that applies to things as a group quite a bit. If we had a flight cancellation because of a blizzard in February and the whole group had to change travel plans, that 165 would cover it for everybody. We don't want somebody to not have insurance at all and be left behind when we reschedule that blizzard trip. So I do require the 165, but I think in these times where, like Dan said, we don't know when it's going to go back to normal, if people like the idea of signing up, but they're not quite sure what's going to happen, or they have their own reservations, then this insurance, if it's worth it to them, would provide them a little bit of a safety net.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hennessy?
So most of my questions have been answered already. And I love the idea of a travel club, and I so wish I was back in high school so I could go on a couple. What is the max number, or is there a max number of students that can go? Or I guess you had the 244 across all of your past trips. What's the typical size of your group? And
somewhere between 30 and 40 is our normal Europe trip number. We had 30 something for Australia, but lost some because of vouchers and things. So I think we're down to low 20s. The smallest group we've ever done was Japan with 12. We did take 2 buses, a double bus where I became a group leader and another chaperone, another teacher was in charge of the second bus. It was not the right fit for us. So I don't think I would ever do 2 buses again. But usually depending on the country, the bus size it's somewhere between 45 students and 50. Is the max. So I have to defer to EF when I'm enrolling students to say, what is my max number? And they give me that number. We had a wait list once of 1 student who couldn't come to England, Ireland, Scotland because the buses wouldn't fit him. But otherwise, we've always been able to accommodate everybody.
Can you talk us through how you sort of choose the countries? I know there are some repeats you've said, and the students are sort of requesting Belize and Peru. Love the sort of South American, Central America, and with diversity and inclusion and everything, just curious of, you know, if that plays into our mind going forward of what countries you're picking.
Yeah, absolutely. Europe was the natural choice for me when I started this because that's mostly where I had traveled. I thought Spain was great because so many of our students take Spanish in school, but our foreign language department has grown a lot over the last few years, and they've really tried to put an emphasis on Central and South America, which has been wonderful for the students to learn more about that region of the world, more of its history, more of the differences between Spain and Latin American countries. Like I said, before going to Ecuador, I knew very little about it. And then traveling to Panama and learning some of the history of the Panama Canal and the people there, and just the history of Western culture kind of combining there, I think the students would really learn a lot, but at the same time, it would almost be hidden in fun activities because there's so many adventurous things there. When I think about the Galapagos, I thought about the animals, and I still think about the animals that I saw, but I learned so much more than that about the people and the Amazon rainforest and Quito as a capital and all the different things that I kind of combined in my head. And I know they would have the same experience in Belize and Peru. I think Machu Picchu is a tourist destination that isn't going to be open to people very much longer. From what I've heard and read, they're really afraid of the tourist impact, and they're definitely going to be limiting the visitors, if not eliminating them entirely at some point soon in the future. So just like when I tell the students, seeing the Great Barrier Reef and getting to snorkel in it is an amazing opportunity because it's changing so much and won't be the same very soon. I think the same thing about Machu Picchu. They do a sunrise, hike up to it, and have all the background knowledge ahead of time, so then they can just really experience this amazing place and have that checked off their bucket list, which is something I always tell them to make a bucket list before we travel, so they can start to plan what they want to do with the rest of their life in terms of places and things they want to see.
Ms. Walsh, quick question. Just that sounds awesome. Just you made a comment there that made me perk my ears a little bit about Machu Picchu, and I've read the same things about the fact that tourists have on the grounds there. What would happen? And maybe this is for Claire too. What would happen if that should happen before this trip should take place?
Oh, great question. I'm assuming Claire, you can take it because I had a guess, but I might be wrong.
Oh, well, I think we would just consult Kristen and ask, if you wanted to postpone the tour, but if that were the case, I mean, we would obviously just change the tour and have all of the travelers move over to the new tour. So we actually have a big Latin America operation. So I know that they are kind of keeping a pulse on everything that's happening on the ground. So I think we would be able to give you advance notice, so it wouldn't be last minute, a week before you're scheduled to leave. But of course, we would absolutely be flexible with you in a situation like that.
Yeah, and Machu Picchu, I want to say, is only one day of the itinerary, so there's so much there as well. And I would probably have a meeting with the students and families and say, here are our options as provided by EF. We can either still keep Peru and do everything else, and they would find a substitute itinerary item for that day. Or if that was their main reason and the majority of students wanted to change the itinerary completely, I know EF would help us with that as well. I don't have the feeling it's going to happen in the next 2 years that tourists will be banned from Machu Picchu, but I know it's definitely on their radar.
Great, thanks a lot.
Thank you. Ms. Hennessy, anything more?
Nope. Emily had some really great questions, and I commend her for the detailed review of the guide.
Just
Most
the
of
guide,
my stuff was like State Department, what's going on, but it seems to be very much covered. Maybe the only thing asking is, with the uncertainty, whether it's the 45 days or 60 days, come back before school committee and maybe give us an update of, is it still a go? Maybe there's more communication,
I think with the
2021 more so than the future years. So.
Yeah, with 45 days before our April trip, absolutely. I'm happy to come back, and I'm sure someone, whether it's Claire or another representative from EF, would come back. But as far as the risk-free enrollment for these potential tours, I think with May 1st being the money back deadline, we'll kind of have a better idea in April of where we stand with that, as well as things are looking better. If people who've been paying for the tour are comfortable moving forward with that, or if we want to talk about changing plans. I think giving them 6+ months to be making payments would be huge for them financially. And then we can make the decision with that no risk.
Good. Sounds good.
Okay. Mr. Mills, do you have any?
No, I'll make a motion to approve.
I actually have questions, sorry. I
Oh,
was
okay, I'm sorry.
going last.
Okay.
So do we normally do, I don't remember us having 2 trips in 1 year. Is that normal? Or
No,
not
it's-
normal, I guess. Is this a first, I should say?
We had it in 2016 just because we had rescheduled one. So we had an April and a June trip that year. But over the years, I had kind of put February out of my head and was discussing when I was in Panama what the best time of year to go to Belize would be. And they said February is a great balance of affordability in terms of time and best weather. And I thought, well, that might be interesting. I know in the past, I think I had shrugged it off because we have so many basketball and hockey players who didn't want to go during that season, where spring sports were a little bit more flexible for them. But I've had a lot of students say they would like to go in February, that they don't have anything going on in February, that might be a better trip for them, and going somewhere warm and relatively close by. It's not an Australia flight or a Japan flight to get to Belize. They thought that would be a good shorter 8-day trip, which is the shortest trip we've ever done. So 8 days over February break. It was just, we're going to try it. I think I've talked to my EF representatives and said, it's worth a try. I don't know how many students at Rockland will be interested in it, where we've always had April and summer, but if it doesn't go well, we'd go back to 1 a year, but just to see what the interest is.
Yeah. There's usually nice weather down there.
Okay. It makes me a little nervous to have 2 1 year when we're just even nervous this year, you know. So you wouldn't be sort of having the same students be going in February and then in the summer, or you're thinking whoever can afford to and wants to?
Well, we've had a lot of repeat travelers. I think, I want to say we've probably had more than 10 who have done 2, and we have one student who will be doing her 3rd if she goes to Australia in June. And I think I always leave it open to, they can do as many as they want if it's within the time frame and their family decides that works for them. We have several that are signed up for both Greece and Australia this year. But yeah, if they could pick one, they could pick multiple ones. It would really be up to them. So if we do go forward and I have the informational meeting, it'll be on a Zoom with families like this. I would present all the tours and all the information. They do have to apply. That stayed the same with Travel Club. They apply and parents will get the updated EF information about the risk-free enrollment and what the 2 insurances break down to be, and make their decisions based on that. But once they get accepted based on their essay and filling out that contract, and they would be able to enroll in whichever tour they wanted.
Okay, and you're looking at, you invite freshmen all the way to seniors to every tour?
The summer tours were the only ones we used to invite to every tour. It used to be juniors and seniors only on April, but because we have opened it up to a tour every year, we've had more demand kind of spread across. So I think freshmen, we'd look at a little bit more closely in terms of their maturity level and make sure that, but again, if they're signing up as a freshman this year, they'd be going as a junior.
Right,
So
exactly.
it's a little different.
Okay. And then they'll tell you how many you said on each trip.
Right.
And they have to keep up their grades and the same requirements as you always put.
Yeah.
Are you going on each trip, you yourself?
Yeah.
And then you have a gentleman chaperone as well, if we have gentlemen students going?
We have had both in the past. We've had female only chaperones and we've had ones with male chaperones as well. I don't add the chaperones until we get closer and we know who's going, because the trips can fluctuate with students changing tours or deciding not to travel. And I don't want to give another teacher the hope that they're going on one of these trips until they actually are definitely going. But I would create the chaperone team when we got much closer to the trips.
Okay.
Jill, that's real quick to jump in, but that's a concern that I've raised in years past as well. As far as the balance of chaperones, there really has been an imbalance of chaperones in the past. And I know it's because, and the answer's been in the past because of demand. But it concerns me that if every year repeatedly there's trips with all female chaperones, it doesn't seem to be an attractive trip for future guys. Also, it concerns me if I were sending a male student on a trip, I would hope that there would be a male chaperone there for particular male needs and male conversation that a young male might not feel comfortable bringing to a female chaperone's attention.
Yeah, I understand that. I don't think we've ever had the conversation about it. It might have been another trip that had this conversation. I had always brought male teachers on every tour until Japan, when there were only 2 chaperone spots for 12 students. And that just happened to be that it was the person who always comes with me and is my most trusted chaperone. And we didn't have any of those issues. I'm sure you're right that they might come up, conversations or concerns that the male chaperones could handle better. We also almost always, at my request, have the same tour director who we've worked with since 2015. So we do have a male adult on tour with us, who the students are very comfortable with and get to know very quickly. If that was a requirement, we could work on it. I know that finding a male chaperone has been difficult in the past. I know that other trips have asked every male staff member for the most part and had a real hard time getting someone who was available and wanted to go. I would be happy to work on that, but I think that for me, and this is my opinion, having a teacher that the students know, are comfortable with, and who does everything possible to be the best chaperone and knows what these tours require of a chaperone, I don't really think gender matters. I'm sure there are those unique exceptions, but we would figure it out for those students who needed that. I would just hate to have a chaperone who doesn't want to be there, who doesn't know what the best routine is. We have a really well-oiled machine of chaperones that have gone for years. And I would like to pick the best chaperones versus just have a male there for the sake of having a male, but I understand your side of it as well.
I do. I respectfully disagree. I think you run a great trip, and I think you do a great job. But as a father of boys, by myself, I can tell you right now that it would make me feel a lot better being on a trip. If my son or myself as a male were being on a trip, that I'd have, a male that I could feel comfortable with, that I know, and a male that I, as a parent, knows my kid is on that trip.
Yeah.
I know if we were looking at it, quite frankly, from the flip side around, and that this was a trip and they were all male chaperones and all male kids and maybe one girl going on the trip, I certainly would want my daughter to have a female representative from Rockland schools on the same trip for the same reasons. I don't know if anybody else agrees, but I do feel fairly strongly about that.
I agree with you, Mr. Biggins. I am a mom of one of each, and which is a funny category to be in, because you're not a mom of girls and you're not a mom of boys. But here it is the perfect scenario, as you said. If my son was going, I would want a male chaperone, and if my daughter was going, I would feel the same way. Just for their own comfort and safety, you're going to a foreign country without your parents and whatnot. You just don't know what's going to come up and who they're going to need. And I, like you said, I would want that person to know my child as well. So that's why I brought it up. I know that it was a question in the past, and so I wanted to ask it again. I think, Kristen, I agree that you do a great job, and I'm happy that it is you that is doing it for us. I think that we just want to look at the numbers when it comes down to who's going on what and see where we can go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, like I said, I haven't added any other chaperones on for the spring trips or spring and summer trip because I shouldn't say that. The summer trip already had chaperones, and I think that's going to change just because we're going to need fewer, which again is why I try to wait till the last minute, so not to disappoint people who get their hopes up, because we have a couple teachers who aren't going to be able to go to Australia if we go this year, just numbers wise. But Greece, when we get down to it, I can definitely take that into consideration. Like I said, we have not had that conversation. You might have had it with other teachers, but this is the first time I'm having this conversation about chaperones with you. And I understand it, I do, but I don't agree with Dan's thing that people won't want to go if it's all female chaperones. We've actually had more male students go on tours than female, which is not, I don't know if Claire could speak, that's not normally kind of the ratio. I think a lot of schools have more female students go, but we've had more males on most trips. So I think trusting the teacher, and I agree with you completely on knowing your students. I try to bring teachers who are involved in other activities in school, who are coaches, who the students connect with, who the students feel comfortable with, who they will go to and talk to about a problem. I think that even if a student's not particularly comfortable with me, there's someone on that tour. I see different teachers connect with different students on tour. I do understand your point about the male, and I would be willing to try to bring a male chaperone if one would be able to come, but I don't think it should be a make or break if a male chaperone will not go, that we wouldn't be able to find a completely competent female chaperone.
Ms. Walsh, we have talked about this in the past. I mean, we could look it up in the minutes. We've talked about this on previous trips on previous committees. We've talked about it in public minutes. I've expressed it personally in public minutes, and it's not a make or break for me. And please don't consider this a criticism. It's not at all.
No, I know where you're coming from.
It's just a concern that I have. It's a concern that I have for these trips. It's a concern that I have for kids going on them, for parents of kids going on them, for even other staff members. I know you mentioned, it's not that I don't believe it, it's not that you mentioned that it's been hard to get, other teachers to go along, or male teachers to go along. And, I don't know what can be done to fix that, but I mean, it would just be great to see, a diverse group of people that are going on this particular, not only in, other spheres, but certainly gender.
I agree with you, Ms. Higgins. It's not make or break.
Not a criticism, just
Right. I agree. Another question I had that I know that might not have been brought to you, but I know it's been a concern with us for Guatemala and just different other trips, just safety, security, emergencies. Do we have a protocol for all of a sudden you're there and now we need to get you out? What do we do? What's that? Can you tell me about that, please, Claire?
Yeah, that happened. All right.
Sure.
Right.
Yep. So we do have a 24-hour emergency response team in the event that anything happens. We also have offices in almost every country that we travel to. So, if a group is, are you just saying if they get stuck in a particular location and they need to get out?
Yes, like if there's, something happened in that country and now we need to evacuate from that country. How do we get you out of that country? And we'll talk to parents, and I'm assuming here have information, phone numbers and whatnot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this actually happened in March when President Trump made the announcement that Americans would no longer be able to, to travel from Europe back to the US. So I think in 24 hours, we booked thousands of flights to get all of our travelers back home safely. Even if they were in a country that was kind of closing its borders, we secured coach buses to get them to a different city. So Paris to London, for example, and then flew them out of London. So I think our global presence really comes into play in the event of, an emergency. We've been around for over 55 years. We've seen a lot. So
a few things, yeah.
So, and the tour director too is fully trained in safety and incident response. So in the event that anything happens, they know how to escalate it. We can get, other staff members if we need any additional support on the ground to go meet the group, to help with moving them if we need to move them. But yes, I mean, safety again is our top priority. So we want to make sure that that all of our groups are safe.
Yeah, we had that happen in Rockland several years ago, and EF responded amazingly well.
Oh, I'm so happy to hear that.
Yeah, we had to get a student out of I forget where it was now, but they did a great job in doing it.
So I just want to make sure, we're the ones here talking to our parents and they're our students. So I just like to know that we're equipped. If I'm sending our students, I feel I sleep better at night if I know that I'm comfortable with you. Right.
Like I said, they did an excellent job the last time we had a situation like that.
Right. Hopefully we won't need to worry about any of that. Hopefully they'll just go and have a great time. Does anyone else have any other questions, concerns, thoughts? No one is putting their hand up. Okay.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye, aye.
Aye.
Yeah. Can we roll call just so it's on? Mr. Mills,
Roger, yes.
Ms. Hennessy,
Yes.
Ms. Davidson,
Yes.
Mr. Biggins.
Yes, ma'am.
And I say yes as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
All right, have a
You're
good
welcome.
night.
Thank you.
And I'll plan when we get to March, around March, to make a plan to come back and talk to you about what's going on with current travel in the spring and summer.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Thank you, Ms. Welsh.
Thank you very much. I
Sure.
appreciate
Thank you very much.
you. You can run now and you can get off the Zoom if you'd prefer to not sit through the rest of this.
Thank
We
you very
won't be
much.
offended.
Have a
Thank
wonderful
you.
night, everybody.
You
You
too.
too.
Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
Claire.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay. Now on to our homeschooling. Anyone have any questions for or regarding our homeschooling?
Big packet.
It is, as usual, right, Mr. Mills, a big
It
packet.
is. It
Lots
is.
of reading.
Ever, though, bigger than ever.
Yeah.
And we all know why.
Seems to be growing a little bit.
Well, I wondered, I was going to ask that. Is it bigger this year because of COVID, Dr. Minigula?
Yes, this year, actually, I was gonna just tell you, we have 28 families that have opted to homeschool their children, which comes to a total of 45 students. In comparison, last year, we had 15 families for a total of 25 students. So I'm sure, given the pandemic, you know, the number of parents that decided to homeschool their children has doubled.
Right, I wondered that. As I was reading through sort of their information, I was thinking that seemed to be a few of them, that was their
Right.
choice. And I don't blame them. They have every right to make that decision. So.
Right. And I will tell you, the range is approximately the same as it was last year. This year, we have 26 elementary students that are participating in the homeschool, and that would be pre-K through 4. We have 12 middle school students and 7 high school students, which was similar to what we had last year. We have received curriculum plans that are written in accordance with the child's decision, and they align very nicely with our school curriculums and are based on the Massachusetts curriculum frameworks and standards. They usually have their children do in the areas of history and social studies, geography, English language arts, which is reading and writing, the mathematics, and then our science and technology. So in the past, when they have submitted their students' work at the end of the year, we usually get portfolios that have journals in them, logs of activities that the students have participated in. There are progress reports that show us evidence that the students had a successful year and were successful and progressed throughout the year learning the content. There's a lot of work samples, and some families actually combine it with online platforms such as TECA. They've done Khan Academy. There's a new one this year that some of our families have done and like very well, called Time 4, and also Liberty Academy online platform. So I think over the years, what parents have submitted have been very comprehensive and really show, like I said, that the students had a successful year and progressed significantly as the year went on.
Can I ask a question? Are you satisfied with all their plans that they've submitted to you?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Because in the past years, there has been some questions about some of the plans that
Right.
were submitted in a lack of actually detail that we've had in there. It appears that they've done a nice job on it. I've gone through a lot of these here.
Yeah.
And we get some of the samples at the end of the year. We get to progress reports from them to you, right?
Right.
Yep. And you review that stuff. Okay.
Yes.
And do you check in with them, Dr. Maniglia, like throughout the year? Just to see?
Yes. Often the parents will email me or call my office. So we communicate that way.
Okay.
Consistently. Anytime they have a question or a concern, we've been in communication.
Okay. And are we a resource for them? Like if they're struggling with one thing or another, do they reach out to us for that too? Or are they sort of on their own homeschooling? I don't understand that.
They can reach out to us, and some have in the past, but I would say the majority of the parents, like I say, they've combined portfolios of their students, and they've also done some online platforms, which does some informal and formal assessments of the child to make sure that they are learning the content successfully. In the portfolios, they have progress reports, from some of these platforms, and they've really organized the child's work by content, and the samples are usually dated. And like I said, over the years, they've seemed like they've gotten significantly better.
Yeah.
Right.
I've seen, Khan Academy, I've followed that for a while, and they have some good progress reports and,
Yes.
status reports of where the student is and goes from there.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Right. Anybody else have any questions?
I just have a question.
Sure.
Sure.
On one of them, it says grade 0.
That means pre-K, because I
Okay.
have two children this year that are pre-K
Okay.
and will be homeschooled.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's good. That's good.
All right. Anyone else? Any questions? No? I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second. All those in
Aye.
Aye, Captain. Okay, thanks, Dr. Maniglia.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We will move on to approving the fundraisers for the class of 2023 Bulldog Bucket Hats. And I was just going to pull up the picture. Here we go, trying to work with the screen. Yeah, I don't know if you're going to be able to see.
No,
Can you see it?
just barely.
Oh, gosh.
That's all right.
Now?
Nah.
No, okay. Well, anyways, it's a white bucket hat that sort of looks like a Gilligan hat with
okay.
Rockland Bulldogs with the bulldog in the center.
Okay.
So it's the Rockland Bulldogs and then the bulldog in the center. They don't have a price yet. They were sort of looking for us to approve so that no one got the idea next or before them, I should say.
Okay. Motion
It
to
does look like a cute hat idea. So that is for the class of 2023.
Okay. Motion to approve.
Motion, seconds.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And then for the class of 2021 seniors, they are doing a calendar. And I thought that was a great idea to sell calendars with pictures
We lost you.
of different sports clubs, departments, etc.
Okay.
So those will be from late October to mid-December.
Is that for class of 2021 or 2023?
Jamie, it's funny that you just said it because as I flipped pages, I realized it says two different. It says class of 2023 on the form itself. So I'm going to go with that and assume the first page is a mistype.
I think what they're trying to say is it's a 2021 calendar.
Yeah. And for the class of 2023.
For the class of 2023.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
It took us all to figure that out.
Go Ashley.
A team
Yeah.
effort.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's all of us. Okay.
Your enrollment.
My agenda fell on the floor. Approval for fundraisers, and now we'll go on to the 2020 October 1 enrollment. Dr. Cron.
Thank you. It's pretty self-explanatory. We're down about 80 students from last year, I think, between homeschooling and the very large senior class that we graduated. That accounts for most of the kids. Overall pleased with enrollment. But again, not a lot to say about it. Just we have a very large middle school this year. Enrollment 770, the largest I can remember in quite some time. And yet the high school is still over 600. So I'm feeling pretty good about enrollment overall.
Good. Thank you.
I think the numbers look impressive. Any questions, anyone?
No, looks good.
Okay, thank you. And now we have a COVID update. Back to you, Dr. Cron.
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen. Try to shrink all of you over here so I can read my own writing. Okay, so
Oh, thanks, shrink us more.
first of all, can everyone see can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. So this is just a very brief update. This is evolving. When I say it's evolving, I mean because we are tracking over 80 cases.
Oof.
They're not cases of COVID in the schools by any stretch of the imagination, but what is happening is it is a family member or a relative or a neighbor or a team member. And so it's been forcing us to track all of these cases over and over, and it's evolving a bit. So what I wanted to go over today with everyone is just to confirm with the public and to go over this with the committee, just a few things, particularly what happens when a student or staff member tests positive. The first thing that happens is a report comes to me and it comes to Jane. We log it, and then we share that with Delshawn Flip, our local health agent, and with Kathy Ryan, our nurse leader. We then begin contact tracing. So that's very detailed. That involves conversations with classroom teachers, with the principal, with coaches. It involves reviewing video footage from buses to see was a student a close contact or not. We retrace all the steps. We determine the infectious time period. We then advise and contact our close contacts first and foremost. We then send a notification to the classmates and the busmates of the infected student. So again, if your child is in a classroom with a student who is test positive for COVID, you will be personally notified. The next and final thing that we do is notify the entire school community via email. We weren't doing this the very first day because we had, again, such a detailed notification system in place and trying to protect the privacy of the infected person. But we're seeing that most of our neighbors are sending out entire school community emails. And so I don't want people to feel for any minute that we are not being completely transparent. So for that reason, we are also now sending entire school community emails whenever we get a positive case.
Alan?
Yes.
Dr. Cron, just actually, we have been doing number 3 rather than D.
Okay, so when we switch to notifying the entire school community, then we stop
Correct.
notifying classmates and busmates.
Correct. So on D, we're no longer doing D. We've replaced D with number 3, but we are continuing to do the C.
Okay, thank you.
Question?
Yes.
Yes.
On these close contacts, should the school become aware that a child has tested positive and they identify the close contacts during the school day? How is that handled during the school day with those students and those families?
Those close contacts are taken out of school immediately. They go to the COVID room, and obviously they're already masked, but we follow our procedures from there.
So that's sort of what I'm thinking of. And, I'm looking at this, and I know this is all well thought out and planned, and it's all for safety and all this kind of stuff, but I sort of get down to the knee level to like a little guy, a 4th grader or a 6th grader or a 1st grader that may be in the middle of the day going through their in-school learning, and their family or the school community being notified at that point that they were in close contact. So how is it handled with those individual students as they're taken from their classroom? Because you can imagine it might be quite scary for a young child to be taken out of their classroom in a quick manner. Is it explained to them? They're brought to the COVID room where I imagine there's somebody that's rightfully so in PPE. You know, I can just imagine a 6-year-old or an 8-year-old being taken from class and isolated in a room with a person dressed in such a way. And I'm just wondering, from a child developmental way, how that's sort of being presented with those children.
So if we have not had that situation at the elementary level, at this point, we have had parents becoming aware that they have a close contact within their household, and parents have initiated bringing students home during the midday, but we have not had to have a close contact at the elementary level go home. We have identified close contacts of both middle and high school. And they have been called down to the nurse's office from the class, and in 1 or 2 situations, I believe Dr. Harrison went and got the students.
I think Mr. Biggins, what you're referring to is something that's still pretty new to us, but I think we do need to be very, very mindful of the way in which we're notifying the student and communicating with the families. I think your point is well taken. We don't want to scare any child or.
No, 100%. And I know, and you know, a lot of things that are going to happen throughout this year, unfortunately, despite best planning and practice, are going to be reactionary, and we're going to have to learn from sort of what we're going through at a particular time. And I just want to make sure that, you know, and I know I'm glad to hear that this hasn't happened at the elementary level as of yet in this particular way, but most likely it will. And, you know, when that happens, we need to realize that, you know, a 5 or a 6-year-old that's being taken from a class and brought into a room with someone who's dressed in such a way. And I think that needs to be handled with kid gloves with that child. And not only that, forget if it's elementary school, no matter what the age level is.
Right.
Once that child is identified that's been in close contact, how are we communicating at this moment with those families at home? I think we need to be able to make sure that if we're notified that, or families notified that their child has been in close contact, that maybe that there's some level of instruction or communication from the school department as how those families should proceed in the coming weeks.
Correct. And that is what we're doing. But again, we've only had 2 situations where we had close contact notification. Today was really the biggest. The first time that we had something hit during the school day where we had to notify. So we're still getting our sea legs together on that, but your point is well taken, and we will definitely handle those notifications with kid gloves and have some conversations tomorrow about it.
Sure, and just on the same sort of, on this, not to interrupt, but on the same sort of topic, but similar sort of question. So academically now, so if you're a kid that's been in close contact and it's like Tuesday or Wednesday in the middle of your in the middle of your in-school week,
Yep.
And now you're taking out of your in-class instruction, and you're going to be going home midweek to begin further instruction. I imagine that they're not going to be able to hop on midweek with the other cohort seamlessly, right? So what is going to happen with these kids that get sent home midweek close contact? How are they going to be sort of integrated within the curriculum?
So they're going to be treated the same way we would treat any kid who went home, quote unquote, sick.
Mm-hmm.
So the teachers are going to be still communicating with them. They're going to stay in their cohort. We're not going to switch kids out of a cohort.
Mm-hmm.
They'll stay in their cohort and be treated almost as if they were sick that day.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not considered a sick day. But they will still be communicating with their teachers, and their teachers will get work together for them.
Great.
And if I could just add, Dr. Cron, I do want to reassure you that the nurses have put a tremendous amount of effort into the COVID rooms in the school buildings to make them as welcoming and settling as possible.
Yeah.
They've Eston's, but I was in Eston's, Jefferson's, and they have a video set up. You know, they've put a lot of thought into
I
the
mean, I
host.
just look at it from sort of a caregiver point of view, right? And let's just
Sure.
say, God forbid, little Johnny, elementary school kid, third grader or something, is pulled from class and he finds out that his brother has just tested positive for COVID.
Right.
We've all been sort of conditioned in recent months to be very, very scared of COVID. And to a young mind and a young child, hearing his brother or his grandmother or anybody has COVID, no matter how comfortable we make the room, is going to be scary for a little guy. And if we haven't thought of it yet, I just want to make sure that I say it, just to make sure that we sort of have that in mind as we handle our littlest.
Absolutely.
Well, who would be making that notification to you guys, to the school? Would it be the parent or grandparent or somebody? Is that who's going to communicate that information to you, that, you know, Johnny's, you know, brother is sick, or cousin, or, you know, grandparent or something like that? Who's communicating that to you?
The reports are coming from anywhere from the parent, the family, which is where most of them are coming from. At other times, we've been notified by the health agent.
Okay.
So we're learning about cases from all different angles. By the time we went to make close contact communications today, they had already been made by the parent of the kid who tested positive.
Okay.
So,
So more than likely, the parent's going to be coming down to tell you.
right,
Yeah, and you know, they're going to pick up their child at that point.
right.
But I'm assuming it's not up to, I'm assuming that, so if I'm home and I get the call that my student that's in the school is in a close contact, I'm not able to get a hold of my student, right? In some fashion, on Dan's behalf, I feel like maybe you bring the student into the hallway and I'm talking to my own child so that they're not in a panic. Mom's on her way, you know, this is what's going on. So the information comes from the parent rather than from you guys in your PPE. Is that something we should explore?
I think some of it is timing. I think the way it happened today, I would imagine that with it being so new that people are still a little afraid of things, still a little afraid of it. I think it's going to become something that we'll be better at. We'll be better at the notification process as we have to do it more often.
We hope not.
So I don't know if we should have the parents come in or not. Again, we're trying to limit contact in general. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure that would be the way to go, but
Alan, the questioning wasn't critical on anything that's happened. It just sort of, what's sort of unfolding is just sort of opened my mind to other questions and sort of how we can, you know, handle this in best way. I mean, fortunately that, you know, any exposures at this point haven't been at the elementary school level, and this incident sort of happened yet, but it just caused me having little guys of my own, you know, to imagine what it might have been like for, you know, my first grader to be asked to come out of class and to find out that potentially someone that, you know, is in his immediate family may have COVID, or as he calls it, the corona. Corona.
And he doesn't mean a beer.
No,
I do.
I'm going to go on with this because there's just a few more points that I want to hit here. So we've covered this one. We do our contact tracing and then notify the community. And just to define again for the public, what is a close contact? It's first of all, if you're a close contact, you should be tested, but it's defined as being within 6 feet of a COVID case, someone who's tested positive for at least 15 minutes, and it can occur while caring for, living with, visiting, or sharing healthcare waiting area room with COVID-19 case, while the case was symptomatic or within 2 days before symptom onset, or having very direct contact with an infected individual. So for example, someone coughs on you while not wearing recommended personal protective equipment. So that is the definition of a close contact. What happens if someone in school tests positive? The first thing, their close contacts will be defined, again, as I just said, those who have been within 6 feet. The infectious period begins 2 days prior to symptom onset. If someone is asymptomatic, the infectious period is considered to begin 2 days prior to the collection of their positive test. While previous guidance stated, this was from DESE, that all students in an elementary classroom would be defined as close contacts, new guidance provides a narrower definition of close contact. So for example, we had a case in the Eston Elementary School. When we did contact tracing, there were 0 close contacts from that student. That was after speaking directly with the teachers of that student while reviewing bus monitor video to be sure that that was the case. And one thing that we can take away from things after 2 weeks of this post-corona education world is that our protocols and procedures for safety within school at this time seem to be working. We have had 0 close contacts identified within school, which means that our plan is working to minimize or limit or reduce any kind of transference of the virus within school. That's not to say that it's not happening outside of school, but within school, what we have in place seems to be working. And again, all identified close contacts are notified by the school principal or his or her designee. In some cases, it's the school nurse, and they're given further instructions for quarantining and testing. And then this district-wide email. How long do we quarantine? Close contacts should be tested, but must self-quarantine for 14 days because the virus can cause illness from 2 to 14 days after exposure. So even an asymptomatic individual can transmit the virus. So if you are identified as a close contact, even if you receive a negative test result, you must still continue to quarantine for 14 days, as the virus may take up to 14 days to cause illness. That's important. If you test positive, you must self-quarantine for 10 days from the last exposure and until 72 hours have passed with no fever without the assistance of any fever-reducing medication and improvement in other symptoms. When can I return to school after symptoms? If you have COVID-like symptoms, you may return to school after you have tested negative, have an improvement in symptoms, and have been without fever for at least 72 hours without the use of fever-reducing medications. If your doctor makes an alternative diagnosis, the individual may return to school based on the recommendations for that alternative diagnosis. If a student or staff member presents COVID-19-like symptoms and chooses not to be tested, they may return to school 10 days from the start of symptoms as long as their symptoms have improved and they have been without fever for at least 72 hours prior to the return to school without the use of fever-reducing medication. What if a family member is identified as a close contact, for example, multiple students in the household, or in some cases, a parent and students? Family members of close contacts should quarantine until test results are returned for the close contact. Now, I know this is getting complex because I'm all these terms, but if you're a family member of a close contact, you should quarantine until those test results are returned. If the close contact's test comes back negative, then the close contact remains quarantined, but the family member would be free to return to school following the negative test result. So we spent the day discussing this one, and I just wanted, again, to give sort of an overview of where we are and sort of the depth of things as far as process and procedure going with notifications. We're learning as we go, as Dan said. We want to get better at this, especially the notification process, but it's been most important that people at this time understand that we're being, completely transparent and trying to share this information as effectively as possible while retaining and protecting the privacy of those students who may be affected. So that's all I have on a COVID update. I don't know if anyone has any more questions about COVID.
Have to digest that.
And I feel like that was a lot to digest, although with Dr. Cron, I have been hearing about it a lot today.
Yep.
Any questions, anyone?
No, just a comment. Like we said, we're kind of planning things as we go, and we're learning as we go. And I just want to say we're doing it well. I mean, I feel like the schools are communicating well. As Alan said, they're doing a fantastic job of being transparent. Everyone's really absolutely doing their best. What I've been able to see, families are doing a great job too. I mean, maybe, Alan and you all can speak to school
Totally agree.
reports of that, but it just seems as though parents have been really, really supportive and understanding. It seems as though kids have really stepped up. I don't know that I would be this much of a bulldog as a kid, going through a pandemic. I don't know that I'd be disciplined enough to get in front of a computer every day or to keep my mask on. And These kids are making us proud every day. And man, all around, I mean, it's not all gumdrops and unicorns, but in fact, it's the opposite. But I think we're making, everybody around here is really making the best of a very difficult thing.
Right. And I thank you for putting this packet together. It's very informative. And I appreciate all this information.
Thank you. I did have a comment on the sick child. I had a mom reach out to me last week. Her child was homesick for sick, nothing to do with COVID, just being sick. And they didn't jump into the opposite cohort, but the teachers were outstanding on making sure that the child, while he was homesick and still able to do work, did not fall behind and still felt sort of warm and snuggly with his teachers that he had only seen a little bit. So I thought that was kudos to our teachers too, and for the family being able to get what they needed across and get that student still learning, even though he was homesick, which in times past, the child's home. He's home. You get a packet sent home, you get it a couple days later or whatnot. This is sort of maybe a sign that this is where we're headed, that they still are able to email back and go forward without losing stride, you know? So I wanted to just say that I've heard positivity for that.
I have one more question, excuse me. Do we have any remote students on the system now?
Yes, we have remote students.
Okay. And they're getting all this material, and how are they doing with the remote status?
They're doing well. The attendance is very, very good. I could give you a more detailed report on the remote kids in the very near future. But again, checking in with the principals, it's going well so far.
Okay. We know technical difficulties and stuff like that. I mean,
Well,
there's always that. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, we definitely had some connectivity issues, but those seem to be working themselves out. And well, I shouldn't say that. They're not working themselves out. We're working them out.
Yeah.
The staff are communicating with the families. In some cases, staff are actually going to the homes to help them troubleshoot connectivity issues. So we're really all hands on deck trying to get this done. Just overall, sort of to dovetail what Dan was saying, you know, when I'm asked by someone I meet, someone finds out what I do for a living, and they look at me with great sympathy, and they say, "Oh, what a horrible, terrible, awful job you must have right now."
Yep.
Quite honestly, I look at 99% of them, no matter what kind of day I had, and I say, you know what? It's not true. The kids have been unbelievable.
Right.
The parents have been unbelievable. I mean, in the face of bad news, the parents haven't snapped. When I thought people would snap, they're not snapping. People are really stepping up, and that's what's making all of this work. So again, I don't want to be all rainbows and unicorns either, because it's been a really long day of COVID. But I will tell you, I couldn't be more proud of our teachers and of our staff and of our parents and our kids. Everybody is just really doing a great job.
That's good to hear.
You know, I know we were talking with Ms. Walsh just a little bit about foreign travel, and there was no need to be critical of her or anything, but I want to compliment her. You know, I mean, here we are in the middle of a pandemic, and teachers are still showing up to work, and she's still trying to figure out a way to, you know, think about a potential trip in two to 3 years. So the beat's still going on, right? Yeah. I mean, she's talking about giving some kids some hope, and I think that's awesome. And she's doing it. You know, I know my kids, my boys coming home talking about how much they love their new teachers this year, and I overhear them. It's not often you get to overhear your kids' classes, but we're getting to hear that a lot in homeschooling. And these teachers are awesome. They're doing an awesome job. I mean, despite an extraordinarily difficult gig that they've never had to do before, they're doing it great. And I don't want to keep chatting because I know we got still have more material to get through, but no, I think it's going about as well as we can.
Yeah.
I agree. Okay. So no other questions, comments?
No.
Okay. Moving on to teacher evaluation. Back to you, Dr. Cron.
Okay, I'll share my screen again. And
There we go.
okay, so this is obviously a very, very different school year, and teacher evaluation is a very important annual undertaking. But it is just that. It is an undertaking. It involves a tremendous amount of work for the teacher, tremendous amount of work for the evaluator, but it really is our primary teaching tool between administration and teachers and their own professional development. So it is a very important aspect of what we do. So in trying to figure out how do we approach teacher evaluation in the midst of what we are dealing with, we've come up with a proposal to do things a little bit differently than we have in past years for this 1 year. So again, as I wrote here, because of the many systemic changes we're undergoing, we're spending a great deal of time adjusting to online teaching and implementing the numerous safety plans and protocols we have in place. For this year, I'm proposing that we evaluate professional status teachers differently than we evaluate non-professional status teachers. Professional status teachers, just to remind everyone, they have completed a minimum of 3 years of teaching, 3 full years of teaching under the Mass Teachers Evaluation System, and would have been evaluated a minimum of 12 times, 2 announced and 10 unannounced. Non-PTS teachers are in their first 3 years of teaching. So just to clarify. So my proposal for professional status teachers is that in lieu of the evaluation cycle outlined in the teacher's contract, I propose that we have our professional status teachers conduct 1 peer observation of either an online or remote class or an in-person class. Professional status cooperating teachers would be assigned by their evaluator, who are primarily principals. Principals, Linda Maniglia, I evaluate the principals, and that's sort of how it works. So the timeline would go like this. By November 10th, teachers would be assigned a cooperating teacher. So we'd be pairing our professional status teachers together. And we'd be doing this strategically. We don't want to pair a senior teacher who's just got a million tools in the toolbox with a brand new teacher or with a 4th year teacher, because I want all of our teachers to be challenged and learn from one another. So we would be pairing these teachers together strategically. We have them meet with each other, talk through their lesson plan, observe that lesson plan by March 15th, and complete a peer observation form following their observation of that class. Using that peer observation form, the peer observer will highlight 3 areas of strength from the lesson and make 2 suggestions or ask 2 questions. And the peer evaluation form would later be shared with the evaluator. By May 1st, the professional status teacher will meet with their evaluator, with their principal, to review their peer observation experience. During that meeting, the evaluator would complete a peer review summary form that highlights the lessons from the process. This form would be attached to the final evaluation form and would be included in the teacher's personnel file. For this 1 year, final evaluation ratings for professional status teachers will remain the same as they were in 2019-2020. Okay. Non-professional status teachers. So these are 1st year teachers, 2nd year teachers, or 3rd year teachers. I propose that instead of all 24 indicators, that we limit the scope of evaluation for this 1 year to the 6 focus indicators for teaching. This is what DESE has identified as the 6 focus indicators that we should be honing in on for this year, again, because it's a very different year. And I also propose that we establish 2 district evaluation goals for pre-K to 12. So instead of having every teacher come up with their own goal, we create 2 district-wide goals, and then they come up with how they want to solve it. So if you have the same goal for music as you have for a math teacher in high school, they would both be working toward the same goal, but obviously they would have very different action steps and very different lesson plans for how they would be, different curriculum for how they would be trying to achieve that goal. The district student learning goal that I'm proposing would be by May of 2021, teachers would create and update a learning management system, Google Classroom, for each class that will include weekly agendas, weekly links to assessments. Now, this is what we're asking every teacher to be able to do. I want them to really focus on it and get very, very good at it. Professional practice goal. Through in-person synchronous and asynchronous work, keep all students connected and engaged, as measured by the percentage of completed student work. Our goals for this year should be very streamlined, in my opinion, very streamlined and simple and consistent so that the teachers can really get a lot out of it. Keeping our students engaged. When I have this sort of off the record conversation with a principal, what are your goals for this year? My goals are, number one, that my teachers become as effective as possible at teaching remotely. And number two, that we don't let any kids slip through the cracks, that every kid is connected and engaged. Not just those kids who have everything set up for them nice and cozy at home, but especially for those kids who don't. So how are we approaching those kids so that they don't fall further behind? So what I'm laying out here as a proposal is that we do things a little bit differently than we've done in years past, that we streamline our evaluation system for this 1 year. We're already at October 13th. I'd like to get something in place so we can start with the evaluation system right away. And I feel as though this proposal, if adopted and supported, would give the district a chance to really take something concrete out of this year to improve our school skills with remote teaching and learning, and also to really work hard at connecting with all kids, especially those kids during remote and, the kids that aren't necessarily succeeding as much as the others. So that's my proposal, and I'd entertain any questions or comments.
It's pretty
Any questions?
comprehensive to me. You did a nice job on that, being a former teacher. I would appreciate that.
Question, Dr.
Anyone
Cron.
else?
What's the split between professional teachers and the non-professional? Do you have a breakdown? Is it 60-40, 80-20?
I'll take a really bad guess and say 80-20.
Yeah.
70-30 at the most. I can get you an exact number on that, though.
Just curious of, where the weight was, if it was more around that peer coordination versus
When it comes down to workload as a principal, I'll give you an example. John Harrison has nearly 50 people to evaluate this year. That's 50 pre-meetings, 50 observations of a teacher's classroom, and 50 post-meetings. So it's very work intensive for the evaluators. It's also intensive for the teachers who have
That's all the documentation.
Right. So what this allows us to do is at the end of the year, we can look back and see we've had our professional status teachers collaborating with one another. We've had them working with one another, talking about teaching and learning, taking best practices and sharing them. And also just getting that experience of having another teacher in their classroom. And our non-professional status teachers, rather than having to choose from all of these different goals and objectives, if we give them the goal and objective and really work with them, then the whole district will be working at remote teaching and learning and being connected to all students. So I feel like they're two very broad goals, but the principals and the teachers will be able to massage those goals into making their classrooms stronger. That's the hope anyway.
Yeah.
I think it's a great way to intermingle teachers from other schools too. So it's not just, one elementary school. They could be across the 3 elementary schools and things like that. I feel like it's a great tool for them to get to know each other if they don't know each other.
Have you communicated have you talked to any teachers about this plan?
The union, we've been talking with the union.
Okay.
The union negotiating team is meeting this week to talk about it. But yes, we've been talking about it with teachers. If I were a teacher, I would absolutely love this idea.
I agree with you.
I would, and as an administrator, I said this afternoon to our union folks when we were meeting with them. I said, this could be one of the coolest things that we've ever done, that I've ever done as a leader.
Yeah.
It's out of the box. It's different, yet I think it takes this incredibly weird time that we're working in, and it makes sense of it a little bit.
Yeah.
It helps us focus on it. We all have to do evaluation. It's very important.
It's needed.
Needed.
Yeah.
We need to be accountable,
Yeah.
right? So I think this is a way for us to decrease the load on the administrators, decrease the load on teachers to a certain extent, but still come out with a really strong product. So it's pretty exciting.
Yeah. Again, you know, I think I find it's a great idea.
I can't think of anything negative about it, Dr. Cron.
I think it's very good. Good job on that one. Thank you.
Any other questions, thoughts?
Ma'am.
No. You need us to vote, right, Dr. Cron?
No, I don't necessarily need you to vote. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page and you're comfortable with it. You know, the union, again, their negotiating team is going to meet and sort of vote. And the main thing is that we come together and come to an agreement and get this thing going so that we can start this work. You know,
How do you feel the union is doing with this?
I think they're on board with it.
Okay, I would be too. Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I think they're on board with it.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Good.
Sorry to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, that's it. That's it.
Okay, great. No other thoughts, concerns, nothing? Okay.
Sounds good.
All right, then we'll move on to our public service announcements. So I'm going to go how we used to go with ladies first. So I'll start with you, Miss Hennessy, because you're in the top corner. Or my top corner. I don't know if you are the others.
I'm middle top of my own screen here. So
We're out of there all together.
I guess go first and probably I think reiterate what everyone's usually always saying, but want to call out the great work and support that the special education, Mrs. Bates and Mrs. Minyaka. I know personally they've been very supportive of my own children in the middle school. So I just wanted to sort of call them out, and I know the rest of the staff is doing a great job from all of the other conversations that I've had. I guess I also think some area schools are having progress reports coming out. So encourage parents to use Aspen, check in on your kids. Yep. I did hear some parents somewhat surprised that their kids had some missing assignments. So just really continue being engaged and doing the great work that the parents are doing to support their staff. I know mine are excited to be back for their second in cohort A back in school. So drop off has also been really good. I don't know if all the schools, I know the middle school has been really well. The rain was a little tough today, but everything has been good on my end. So cool.
Great, thank you. Mrs. Davidson?
I'm good for tonight.
All right, thank you. I'll go to you, Mr. Mills. You're in my top left corner.
Okay. No, I think this was a very good session, meeting, and I think you did a super job on, particularly on that last one about the evaluation and and to get the teachers and the teachers buy-in on that, and coming up with a plan that makes sense to them instead of going through all that that normal rigmarole that you normally do. Appreciate all the stuff that you've done. It's when I first saw that packet with 6,000 pages to it, it was I said, but I find this this was a really good meeting, and I appreciate everything you've done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mills. Mr. Biggins?
Breast cancer. October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. A lot of people know that I am very passionate about breast cancer awareness. It's really affected me a lot in my personal life. It's affected more than one people and more than one ladies in my immediate family, including my mom, who passed just a few years ago from breast cancer. I'm so passionate about breast cancer awareness and supporting ladies and gentlemen that battle it, that I've got my strong bracelet on. I've got my pink jacket on, my pink tie. But how many people have pink skin like I do as well? That's how passionate I am. But in all seriousness, all joking aside, it's very, very important for self-examination, not only for women, but for men. A lot of people don't realize that men are susceptible to breast cancer just like women are. Men, if you're listening at home, you need to take care of yourself in every way, take care of your health. You need to take care of self-examining, read up on it. A lot of men do suffer from breast cancer. Donate in every way that you can. Support your ladies, your moms, your daughters, your sisters, and encourage them to get tested regularly. And my thoughts and prayers to every single family and lady or gentleman that battles with this really devastating disease. That being said, that's all I got. And I hope everyone stays safe and healthy during this crazy time that we're all living in. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Biggins. I don't have anything to say. How do you finish after breast cancer, Dan? So that's all I have. So I'll accept a motion, or I mean,
Can I
entertain a motion.
Can I hold off a second? Can I ask one more question that just came to mind? Dr. Klein, what about, how's the athletics going with you know?
Well,
Tell me.
These are starting as we laid out, a few meetings ago. We've had some concerns about
Travel.
some youth sports, I think, have been, somewhat of a concern, but that's out of our realm of control.
Right.
But as far as practices and our MIAA activities, we've been, following the protocols that we put in place. I think the coaches have been good about it. I know Mr. Graziano is on top of it and is adamant that we're going to follow the rules. And I feel very confident in that, and Dr. Harrison as well. So, to the best of my knowledge at this point, we're doing very well with athletics.
Okay. I just wanted to think that's an important part. All right. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, Captain. Thank you so much. Have a good
Thank
night,
you.
everyone. Stay safe.
Everybody.
You too. Yeah.